Welcome to Sevier Heights. If it's your first time with us online, we're so glad you dropped by. And if you're here to rewatch a past message, you're in the right place. If you have any questions about service times, giving, next steps, or if you want to learn more about who we are, click the link in our description or just visit sevierheights.org. Thanks so much for being here. Let's jump into Sunday's message.
All right, how many people before UT football games or as they're started, blood pressure climbs? Show of hands. Mine too. It's always been that way, but right now I pay extra close attention to it. And so last night, I'm trying to watch the game, and Jenny's in the other room listening to podcasts. And normally when it comes time for me taking blood pressure, we do it a couple times a day, Jenny does it. I mean, like when I say normally, 99.9% of the time she's taking blood pressure. Well, last night I'm like, I think I can do this still. And so I put on the cuff, and I'm deciding to take it because I just feel antsy. I feel like, man, something's up. And I'm taking it, and sure enough, blood pressure is high. It's like 155 over something. I'm starting to panic. I'm like, what is going on? Because I've been doing so good. Like, I'm great, and what's going on? And I holler at Jenny because I'm too lazy to get up. And I yell at Jenny, and I'm like, Jen, I need you in here. And she comes in, and I said, my blood pressure's high. And she's like, well, you know, what have you done different? Blah, blah, blah. And so we talk. She's like, let me take this. And she said, Tim, the cord's bent. And so she takes it, and sure enough, it's 111 over 70. So I'm just fine, all right? So I really am good. I still get anxious for football games. Whether or not you like the game, we still won, right? I mean, this is good, all right? I am excited to be back today. I feel like things are going good. I still got to stay with this rhythm, but I'm going to be here for the next few weeks, and then I'm going to take another week off. But I'm excited. Next week in this series is more up and out. Believe it or not, it's because it's about when you get surprised by a day 3 encounter. But I need you to hold on today as we kind of spend a little bit more time looking around at day 2. Now, this series we started a couple weeks ago because at the heart of the Christian faith, there are these 3 days. There is this Friday, this Saturday, and this Sunday. Friday is day 1. Saturday is day 2. Sunday is day 3. Because you got to remember, at the Christian faith, at its heart, it's a historical faith, and there are these 3 days that show up on a calendar. Understand, like even when you look at that image up there, day 2 is stuck right in the middle of day 1 and 3. You could say it's hopelessly stuck on the calendar. Day 1 is a day of tremendous pain, agony, suffering for Jesus. Whether it started in the Garden of Gethsemane or it took place at the trial before the Sanhedrin, or even as it unfolded as Jesus was taken before Pilate or tortured by the soldiers or even put on the cross. Day 1, like that Friday, is when sin did its greatest work. It's the day that your sin, my sin, the sin of the world was placed upon Jesus. That's day 1. Day 3, the greatest day in the history of humanity. At day 3, we celebrate a stone that was rolled away, a tomb that was empty. Death was defeated. It's the day we all have hope because of that day. That's day 1 and day 3. And today, we're not talking about day 1. We're not talking about day 3. We're talking about that day that's stuck. Like, what happened on day 2? In that first week, we took a deep dive into day 2 and how not much of the Gospel says much about that other than the disciples leave and they're wondering and they're curious and they've lost hope. It's a difficult season for them. We all understand we go through day 2s. Day 2 is the day after, but it's also the day before. Like it's after day 1, but it's before day 3. It's after Friday, but it's before Sunday. Day 1 is after our prayers are asked, but before they're answered. Day 1 is after, like, your hopes fall apart, but before they're renewed. It's after your greatest disappointment before your greatest joy. It's after a world is broken, but before it's healed. I want us to talk about the day 2 and how day 2 feels, honestly, it feels hopelessly stuck. And today I want to do so by going to an Old Testament story. A guy that was so familiar with day 2. What I want us to do today is to take notes and to jot observations down, lessons to learn, and ways that you and I should respond on behalf of day 2. If you've got your Bibles, if you've got your phone, go ahead and flip over to the book of Job. As we look at this, we're going to look at Job 1, 2, 3, and then one other chapter in the book of Job. And here's what I want to encourage you to do. On a day like this in this room, there are lots of people that are in day 2. There are lots of people in this room who have friends or acquaintances or even family that are in day 2. Some of us need to jot some of these observations from this text down. I'm going to mention about 6 of them. I guarantee 1, maybe 2, and maybe even all 6 in some form or fashion apply to you right now, someone else right now, or it will around the corner. Job chapter 1, verse 1 begins with telling us a little bit about the guy. In the land of Uz, there lived a man named Job. This man was blameless and upright. He feared God and he shunned evil. The verse continues by letting us know that Job and his wife had 10 children, 7 sons and 3 daughters. He had such incredible wealth, lots of land, livestock, and houses. And he also has a deep love for God. Verse 3 gives us a summary statement about this guy Job. Look at it. He was the greatest man among all the people of the East. Now, Job has no idea there is a dialogue going on in the invisible world above him. For some reason, Satan was allowed into the presence of God. And the topic of conversation is Job. God brings Job to Satan's attention. Like, have you ever noticed Job? How much a man of integrity he is, how much he loves me? And Satan says, who wouldn't? I mean, he's got an incredible family. He's got property. He's got land, livestock. He's got all these things. And if you took all that away, God, he'd curse you to your face. And God's like, there's no way. God says, as a matter of fact, Satan, I'm going to allow you to enter into his world and you can do whatever you want. Just don't touch Job. And that's exactly what Satan does. He steps into Job's world and Job experiences a day 1 crisis. And what unfolds afterwards is day 2. It's the day after prayers are asked, but before they're ever answered. After the greatest disappointment takes place, literally Satan destroys everything that he has, and Job finds all of this out through back-to-back messengers. Listen how it unfolds. Verse 13, same chapter. One day when Job's sons and daughters were feasting and drinking wine at the oldest brother's house, a messenger came. That's number 1. Verse 16, while he was still speaking, that messenger, another messenger came. While he was still speaking, verse 17, another messenger came. Verse 18 through 19, while he was still speaking, yet another messenger came and said, your sons and your daughters were feasting and drinking wine at the oldest brother's house. When suddenly a mighty wind swept in from the desert and struck the 4 corners of the house. It collapsed on them and they're dead. Back to back messengers. It completely shatters Job's world. And as we look at his life, I want us to make some observations about his day 2 experience that we need to learn, we need to embrace, or we need to remember. Number 1, we don't get a heads up on God's plan for us. You got to understand, Job had no way of knowing this would happen. Before these messengers showed up, the sun rose that morning just like it did the day before. That night, when he went to bed, it was just like the nights before that he had gone to bed. Understand that there was no writing in the clouds. There was no tap on the window. There was no audible voice letting Job know that the next day all hell would break loose and everything would be destroyed. No, understand, on this day, he got up just like every other day before. He started that day just like he'd done every other day, only to be interrupted by 4 different messengers with the worst news imaginable. Some of you in here, you remember that day for yourself. Some of you in this room realize, on behalf of not getting a heads up on God's plan for us, you can't anticipate it, you can't predict it, you can't even explain it. It's like a lightning bolt in Job's life and his world implodes, and God gave him no warning ahead of time. Understand, this can happen to any of us at any time. Understand that God has a plan for us, but he's not obligated or required to tell us the details. Here's what I mean, and I want you to hear this out because sometimes, we talked about this between services, sometimes this passage in Jeremiah chapter 29 gets taken way out of context. Let me tell you what happens. God is communicating to his prophet, Jeremiah, on behalf of the nation of Israel that is getting ready to go into slavery. Bad news. He's letting them know what's going to happen after the slavery. Meaning that God knows a plan that he has for them. Listen to this. For I know the plans that I have for you, the nation of Israel, declares God. Notice he doesn't say, let me tell you about it ahead of time. Nope. His ways are much deeper and greater. His thoughts are deeper. Instead, he just lets them know, look, I have a plan for you guys, but still know there's good news at the end. Here it is. Plans to prosper you and not to harm you. Plans to give you hope and a future. In other words, we need to understand that for a follower of Jesus, God's ultimate plan for all of us is not heartbreaking, even though at times it feels like it. But it is different than how we plan. Like if we had the opportunity, I don't think we would write the things into our script that God has written. And so here's my advice to you. Ready? Be ready for anything. And I mean it. Like the things that you're enjoying right now in this life, 6 months from now, you might not have. Your world could be completely different a year from now. And here's what I want you to understand. Ready? Biblically, this isn't designed to make you afraid. It's designed just to help you get ready. Because I'm telling you, the news of a day one, a divorce, unfaithfulness, an injury, a diagnosis, loss, a job loss, a financial upheaval. It can come out of nowhere, and God's not required to give us a heads up. Understand, this is the first observation to make, and here's observation 2, Job's response to this news. At this, Job got up and he tore his robe. He shaved his head. Then he fell to the ground in worship, and he said this, naked I came from my mother's womb, and naked I will depart. The Lord gave, and the Lord has taken. May the name of the Lord be praised. In all of this, Job did not sin by charging God with wrongdoing. Observation number 2 to remember. A biblical perspective in day 2, it'll keep you from panic. Like when your world gets rocked, somehow if you can gather your wits and look this way, it keeps us from panic this way. It keeps us from panic this way. Like, don't misunderstand what just happened in this text. Job does not spiral into denial. No, he faces his grief head on. He's overwhelmed to the point that he's shaved his head, he's sitting in ashes, and he leverages. I don't know how he does it. Some of you have been there. I've been there in some form or fashion, but he leverages every bit of emotion he has and that he can in a form of worship. Even if he doesn't feel like it, he refuses to walk away. He refuses to let go of God in this season. When you read Job's words of what he just said, here's what he understands. It's equally right for God to give gifts as it is for God to retrieve them. Job understands that. That's a biblical perspective. Here's something that you and I need to understand in our day 2 moments. It is easier for us to lower our view of Jesus. I can't believe he let this happen. Than it is to raise our faith or confidence in Jesus. Like when life's going great, it's kind of easy to go to church. When life's going great, it's kind of easy to read the Bible. It's easy to talk to God. But when our world's shattered, it feels like the songs are taken from us. I'm not going to lie, like the last couple months when I was kind of at my lowest mentally, I would lay in bed and there were Sundays as I would watch the services here that I would turn the volume down. There are times that I would even turn it off and vocalize to God, God, I do not even want to see any of this right now. My brain was in the most unhealthy of places, but there were times that I'm like, okay, God, if that's the case, then you and I, right in this moment, let's worship. Well, Job, in this spot, he has the wits, the determination. Like the endurance. We'll see this more. To say, you know what, even though this is a tragic situation, I'm going to leverage all the emotion that I can and still put it toward God. Well, things start to get worse, believe it or not. Job's integrity, his humility, it ticks Satan off. So much so that Satan has another opportunity to be in the presence of God. The dialogue continues between God and Satan. Verse number 3 of chapter 2. The Lord said to Satan, have you considered my servant Job? I'm telling you, there's no one on earth like him. He's blameless and upright, a man who fears God and shuns evil, and he still maintains his integrity, though you incited me against him to ruin him without any reason. Now Satan comes back swinging. Skin for skin, Satan replied. A man will give all he has for his own life, but stretch out your hand and strike his flesh and bones, he'll surely curse you to your face. The Lord said to Satan, very well then, he's in your hands, but you must spare his life. So Satan went out from the presence of the Lord and afflicted Job with painful sores from the soles of his feet to the crown of his head. Job is in so much pain, it's impacting everything about him. So much so, verse 8, then Job took a piece of broken pottery and scraped himself with it as he sat among the ashes. Now pay close attention here. His wife's watching. His wife said to him, are you still maintaining your integrity? Curse God and die, Job. In other words, come on, sweetheart. Just curse God. Walk away. Give up. Throw in the towel. Come on, sweetheart. No one will blame you. Understand, she loved Job, and her compassion kicks in. She just wants him to give up. Understand this, because I think a big deal has been made out of Job's wife. Unless you've been there, do not criticize her. She's had 10 of her own children that she gave birth to die as well. She's been visiting their gravesite. Job kindly responds to his wife in this form. He replied, you're talking foolishness, sweetheart. Should we accept good from God and not trouble? In all this, Job did not sin in what he said. Observation number 3, ready? In day 2, good people, like Job's wife, they can still give bad advice. This is his bride. She's loved him through the birth of 10 children. She's loved him through the raising of those 10 children. She's loved him at the start of the business. She's loved him when they were broke. She's loved him before he became famous. They have a deep love for each other, and yet Job has the maturity to know, the wisdom to understand that even though she loves him, she's not giving him biblical advice. Do you realize what happened in her advice to him in verse 9? Think about it. His wife, she questioned what God admired about Job, his integrity. And she encouraged what Satan predicted about Job, that he should curse God. I think Job's response to his wife was extremely difficult to do because he loved her with all his heart. But he also wanted her to understand what we need to understand, that God's primary goal for you and I is not our happiness. Job wanted to remind her that not one tragedy, not one day 2 experience happens, like Tyler said last week, apart from God's permission. In this case, he allowed it. Sometimes he arranged it. Well, let's continue. 3 friends of Job decide to show up after his wife gives this advice. Verse number 11 of chapter 2, Job's 3 friends, when they heard about all the troubles that had come upon him, they set out from their homes. They met together by agreement to go and sympathize with him and to comfort him. When they saw him from a distance, they could hardly recognize him. They began to weep out loud, and they tore their robes, and they sprinkled dust on their head. They sat on the ground with him, for 7 days and 7 nights. No one said a word to him because they saw how great his suffering was. During the Q&A, I hinted at this observation in the middle of our day 2, and you see it in this story. Ready? Wise friends know when to show up, when to shut up, and when to speak up. I wish these 3 friends had just kept their mouths shut. They did so good at the beginning. They heard about the news, they got together, and they made a road trip to Job's house. And for 7 days, they did the right thing. They just sat there in silence with him. Have you ever noticed that when you're in day 2 and some great friends show up and you see their face, you get a hug, it's all you need? They don't have to say a thing. By God's grace, there have been a few friends in our life the last 5 years that just show up. They don't have to say a thing. They cry with us. They hold us. They're not magically reading Bible verses over us. They're not giving us cliche pad answers. They're just there. Unfortunately, on behalf of Job's friends, they couldn't keep quiet. After those 7 days, they'd have finally decided to speak up, to tell Job what's going on, to ask him what he's doing to bring all this calamity on himself. Understand, this is just a word of advice for all of us in this room. When someone that we love, someone we know is going through day 2, know when to show up, when to shut up. And I'm telling you, it's rare that you have to speak up. A simple hug, just showing them your face, a thoughtful gift goes such a long way. With one of my friends that I was expressing gratitude for our friendship just yesterday, they shared this with me. Listen to this statement. It's about who stands in the rain with them when they also have a choice to be dry. That's what a wise friend does. They stand in the rain with someone when they have the choice to be dry themselves, but they decide just to show up and to shut up. Understand that that is an observation that so many of us need on behalf of friends that are in day 2. Well, guess what? After the friends show up, Job hears their advice. He finally breaks. He loses his mind. We get to Job chapter 3. He lets it all out. Verse number 1, after this, Job opened his mouth and he cursed the day he was born. Verse 11, why didn't I perish at birth and die as I came out of the womb? Verse 25, what I feared has come upon me. What I dreaded the most has happened. I have zero peace, zero quietness. I have zero rest, only turmoil. This is Job's thought life. By the way, I think one of the greatest battles that I've faced personally the last couple months has been up here. Understand, to the men in this room, on Tuesday night, as our guest speaker, Clay, who's one of my favorites, is speaking, he's talking about men and our thought life. You want to make it a priority. Understand what we see in Job 3, 1, 11, and 25. You know what this is? This chapter, chapter 3, is the heart of a man who's tired of being stuck in day 2. Think about it. His kids are still dead. He's still sick and in all kinds of pain. There's not enough money for what's needed. His wife's still heartbroken and confused. And his friends are still wondering what in the world he did to bring this on himself. So let's make an observation. Ready? It is easy to become critical of someone else's response in the middle of day 2. Like when we read chapter 3, all these things that he finally breaks and that he says, it's hard to read that. Sometimes I've heard some people say, man, I wish that part wasn't included in the Bible. Like when I read Job 3 and I hear him say, man, I wish I'd die, I wish I was never born. I want to say, Job, don't say that. But understand, none of us in this room have any idea what it's like, as far as I know, to lose 10 children, to lose your livelihood, to lose your land, to lose your home, to lose a chance of providing income. None of us know it. And therefore, it is easy to become critical of someone else's response to day two. This is probably a stupid analogy, but hear me out. Last night, we won, and I'm thrilled. I'm excited. But I know so many people in Knoxville or in Tennessee aren't excited with that win. You ever heard of a Monday morning quarterback? If you haven't, tomorrow morning, on your way to work, on your way to class, on the way home, whatever, turn on the radio and listen to sports talk. And you're going to hear all these expert Monday morning quarterbacks that have never played football in their life tell you everything that should have been done on Saturday evening that wasn't. As followers of Jesus, those of us that are experiencing great days and someone else is in the turmoil of day two, it is far too easy, especially for long-term Christians, to become critical of someone else's response to their own day two. This is what it sounds like. How in the world can she call herself a Christian? If I were God, I wouldn't put up with that. I'd never give up on God. I'd never quit church. I can't understand why he said that. You won't believe what they did. You know what we're doing? We're all criticizing this Job chapter 3. Can I tell everyone in this room something that I don't want you to forget? We all have Job 3 moments. Every one of us. We will say things that we regret during the day two. And there's going to be day two moments where we're about to do something that we know we're going to regret, and we still do it or we still say it anyway. And guess what? Here comes Job's friend, Eliphaz, that's his name. And he starts ripping Job for everything he says. He jumps on Job with 2 feet and then starts swinging 3 different times. And Eliphaz, even though he loves God, he's never experienced an ounce of what Job's gone through. Well, one more lesson before we wrap this up. It's found all the way at the end of the book. Go to Job chapter 42. In Job 42, in verse number 6, we finally find out that Job apologizes to God for running from God and for making all these statements about God. Understand, from Job 1, think about it, from Job 1 to Job 42, no one knows how long that period of time is. That's Job's day 2 season. But listen to what God says after Job comes running back to God. Verse 7. After the Lord had said these things to Job, he looked at Eliphaz. I'm angry with you and your 2 friends because you didn't speak the truth about me. Look here, first time we're going to see it, as my servant Job has. So now take 7 bulls and 7 rams and go to, second time, my servant Job, and sacrifice a burnt offering for yourselves. Even though all he said, it continues, my servant Job, he'll pray for you. I'll accept his prayer and not deal with you according to your folly. You guys have not spoken the truth about me. Here's the 4th time, as my servant Job has. Verse 9, the Lord accepted Job's prayer. You think about this, all the way from chapter 1. Chapter 3 says, I hate the day that I was born. I wish I would die now. From chapter 3 all the way to chapter 42 is day 2. I want you to consider this. That means the journey between day 2 and day 3, it's slow and painful. Ready? But from God's perspective, it's worth it. So I want to tell you, those that are in day 2, hold on. Squeeze tight. Don't run away. It's okay to be vulnerable. It's okay to say things when you mess up and when you mess up again and when you say things you regret and you say things that you regret even though you know you're going to regret it. It's okay. Go back to him with open arms. We take our cues from what Job did and listen to what the New Testament, the brother of Jesus, his name was James. Listen to what James says about those of you in day 2 and Job. We give great honor to those who endure suffering. For instance, you know about Job, a man of great endurance. Now pause for a second. I want you to look up at me. If you remember during the Q&A, I talked to you about those last couple months, how difficult they were. Didn't matter if it was Greg's passing that was sudden. Didn't matter if it was the heart attack, the fact that I couldn't get a cath, the fact that I had to have open heart, the fact that it was 5 bypass, the fact all this stuff for like 2 months. And Jenny and I were walking out there one night. We were just talking. And Jenny made this powerful statement that was so true. It resonated for me. It was both of us a declaration of our hearts. We made this conclusion, like we know God is so kind, right? We sing about it. But Jen made a statement, and I could tell you where she was in the parking lot. She said, but Tim, everything feels so unkind right now. Now look at these next words in James about Job. You can see how the Lord was kind to him at the end. For the Lord is full of tenderness and mercy. There are seasons that feel so unkind. Ask Job. They can be painful. They can be long. You're wondering what to do. You're wondering if the prayers will ever get answered, if your broken world will ever get healed. Understand, he makes a promise. Because of his grace, because of his mercy, he is kind at the end. Today, like with heads bowed and eyes closed, here's what I want to do. I want to bring all of this front and center. I don't want anyone leaving. I just want you to sit here and think. Which of these observations stands out for you? When trouble comes, you've got 2 options. You can view day 2 as an intrusion, an outrage, or you can see it as an opportunity to respond in trust and obedience to God. This is that rugged virtue that James calls endurance. It's not a determination. It is a long, trusting obedience, knowing God is kind, even if we only experience his kindness at the end. So where are you today? Wherever you are on the journey, God's allowed you to be in this room. None of what I've shared today is easy. I have prayed that I wouldn't say a thing that would hinder you from listening. This is not typical counsel. It's fresh food from God's word. And this is what will hold you together when everything is falling apart. For those of you in this room that are not yet a surrendered follower of Jesus, he's not only available to you, he's waiting to hear your prayer of surrender, the prayer that you trust him. In the quietness of this room, in the middle of a day 2, why don't you say this? God, I'm a long way from you. My world's fallen apart. Life hasn't been what it should have. I come just like I am. I trust Jesus. You died on my behalf, and you paid the penalty of my sin. I give you my surrender. If that's you today, after the song, even in the middle of the song, it doesn't matter in a minute, come to the front right of the room. We'd love to talk. Anyone that's in the middle of a day 2 experience that needs to get it off your chest, come to the front right of the room. Doesn't even matter if it's after the service. As you walk out in the foyer, there's going to be another next steps area. Come talk with us. And on behalf of everyone else, I want to pray a closing prayer. God, we love you. We thank you. We worship you. We submit to you. And we confess today the stubbornness of our own will. We confess all the energy that we've wasted running from things we need to face head on. As we're in the middle of day twos, please deepen our walk with you. May you genuinely become the focus of our undivided attention and not out of fear. Break us to the point of full surrender. And use us as the way you've used Job throughout the centuries, as a model of endurance through day two. And I pray all of this today in Jesus' name. Amen.
Let's stand and respond together. The Lord is my shepherd, and he is everything I need. So I will not worry, I will not fear the enemy. He said that he loves me, he said that he's with me, even though I walk through the valley of shadow and death, and still I know he has good plans. He has good plans for me. So I will take heart in deserts and gardens. He has good plans. He has good plans for me. If I know my Father, I know my Father has good plans.